Mayhem on Mackinac Island, the first book in Jonathan Rand's Michigan Chillers books. Perfect for kindergarten, first, second grade, if you like to be scared. Okay, so today is February 23rd, 2023, and it is a special day for Josh. There's Josh right there. This picture was taken 3 years ago. There's me right there, Navy Mom. We had a little getaway. And yeah, it's a special day. So I took the day off and I've been doing all things Josh today. I sent packages of stuff I brought back from Kenya to him and to other family members. And I typed up notes from Joshy's conversations with me, telling me about what's going on in his Navy corpsman career. Been really exciting. And so, to honor this day for Josh, the book I chose is Michigan Chillers, Jonathan Rand. We're going to do Mayhem on Mackinac Island because Mackinac Island is one of Josh's favorite places in Michigan. He loves Mackinac Island. So that's what we're going to do. Now, Josh was not a good reader when he was younger. He was a couple grades behind. And my sister recommended these American Chillers and Michigan Chillers books. She said that her son Richie just loved them and that they might get Josh interested again in reading because it had been a real struggle for him. So we picked up a whole bunch, and between this and Redwall, which I've already done some readings from Redwall, this is what got Josh excited about reading again. So here we go. Mayhem on Mackinac Island by Jonathan Rand. And this book is from the year 2000, I believe. Oh, you can see them all. Look at all of them. All of these American chillers right here in Ohio, in Florida, in New York, in Texas, in Illinois. I wish I had not read as many of them as I have, but I have read almost all of them. And the Michigan chillers. Mackinac Island, Traverse City, which is where we were living at the time. Pretty sure? Nope. Grand Rapids. No, we were living in Grand Rapids at the time. This is Grand Rapids time right here. Alpena, Gaylord, I would end up working there for a while. St. Ignace, Kalamazoo, Detroit, Saginaw, Mackinac, Great Lakes, Osable, which is a river. Grand Rapids, right there. Bay City, Calumet, Caseville, Grand Haven, Sault Ste. Marie, Drummond Island, and Lansing. There we go. This was number one, the first book in the Michigan Chillers series. That's where, so let's see. Jonathan Rand is from Michigan, lived up in this area right here, and Mackinac Island is up here. So the Upper Peninsula is not connected by land with the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. It is a bridge called the Mackinac Bridge. And then Mackinac Island, there's no cars allowed on Mackinac Island, is here. And it's a beautiful place to go and eat saltwater taffy and fudge and bike or walk around the island and explore the Grand Hotel, which was the scene of the famous movie. Okay, wait a minute. Here we go. It was the movie Somewhere in Time with Jane Seymour and Christopher Reeve. A great classic little story, and has as the backdrop the Grand Hotel at Mackinac Island. There we go, and there's a picture of the Grand Hotel. Mackinac Island, which you can only get to by boat. They probably have plane, helicopter also, but us common folk, we can only get there by boat. So anyways, let's get to the book. Chapter 1. My name is Sandy, and I'm 12. Sandra Jean Johnson, if you're really mad at me. But usually everybody calls me Sandy, except my brother Tim. He calls me a lot of other dumb names. Names that he makes up mostly. Silly names, like Sandy Pandy and Sandra Jean, the Queen of Mean. Which isn't fair, because I'm not mean. And he calls me Munchkin. I hate that one the worst. It even sounds bad. Munchkin. I'm a year older than he is, but I'm about an inch shorter. Just because of that, he calls me Munchkin. I hate being called that. I have sandy blonde hair that fits my name perfectly. It's just past my shoulders. Once I got it cut real short, but I didn't like it. Now I wear it long, sometimes in a ponytail or a French braid. Tim has hair a little darker than mine, only his is a lot shorter. Of all the seasons, I like summer the best. We live in Birmingham, Michigan. That's near Detroit. But we spend the whole summer on Mackinac Island. It's about a 5-hour drive from our house in Birmingham. Mackinac Island is an island in Lake Huron, which is one of the Great Lakes. Actually, in my opinion, it's bigger than a Great Lake. It's huge! Much bigger than any lake I've ever seen. It's so blue and beautiful that sometimes I never want to leave. There are lots of trees on the island, and I meet lots of cool new friends every summer. Every summer we have a blast. Except for this summer. This summer turned into a horrible nightmare, worse than I could ever have imagined. But first, I guess I have to tell you about what went on last summer. That's when something really weird happened. Tim and I were at our Uncle Jerry's house. That's the house we stay at on Mackinac Island. Mom and Dad and Tim and I stay with Uncle Jerry and Aunt Ruth. We stay from June all the way till summer starts. It's so much fun. Aunt Ruth and Uncle Jerry are really nice. Their house is really big and pretty, and it's right near the water. They have a dock that extends way out over the lake. There's even a diving board there. We swim a lot and go for boat rides. I asked Dad one day if I could ride my bike all the way around the paved footpath that goes around the island. It's a long way, like 8 miles or something. Okay, Dad told me, but Tim has to go with you. Great, I whispered, rolling my eyes. I did not want Tim to go with me. Tim was in his bedroom playing a video game, but he heard us talking. Hey, that sounds like fun, he yelled. He ran into the living room where I was. Let's go, Munchkin. Terrific. Come on, Slowpoke, he said, running out the door. He already had his helmet on. I wish I could do some things all by myself once in a while. But something was about to happen on the bike trip that made me glad that we were together. Really glad. Chapter 2. My bike is red. Tim's is blue. They're mountain bikes. We each got one for Christmas that year. Before that, we rented bikes from a store on the island. Anyway, we pedaled through downtown. I love downtown Mackinac Island. They don't allow cars on the island anywhere. We can ride our bikes in the middle of the street if we want to. But you have to watch out. There are lots of other people on bikes and even more people walking. But the thing you really have to watch out for is the horses. On Mackinac Island, horses are used to pull carriages and wagons. Since there are no cars, horses pull buggies around the island. The buggies and carriages carry everything from luggage to supplies to people. You can even go for a tour on a horse-drawn carriage if you want. But the best thing about downtown is the delicious aroma of sweet, tantalizing fudge. It's everywhere. Drifting out from the stores, through open doors and windows. Yum! I could eat fudge all day. You probably could too if you stayed on Mackinac Island all summer. Watch out! I suddenly yelled at Tim. He wasn't watching where he was going, and he almost ran into a man pushing a cart. Tim swerved just in time. That was a close one. We rode through town and continued on the paved blacktop path that winds all around the island. It's a fun ride. You can see boats on the water and even the Michigan mainland in the distance. And seagulls. Lots of seagulls whirled above and sat near the shore. When we were about halfway around the island, Tim stopped. I'm tired, he said. I need to rest. He hopped off and laid his bike against a tree. He took his helmet off and set it on his bike seat. For the first time in my life, I think I actually agreed with him. I was tired too. I hopped off my bike and walked down to the water where Tim was. He was skipping rocks. I picked up a nice flat rock and let it fly. It skipped 15 times. Show off, Tim said. But he was just jealous. He knew he couldn't skip a rock 15 times if he tried. I felt proud. Suddenly, he turned and pointed. Look at that, he said. I turned and I couldn't believe what I saw. I just couldn't. I had to get closer and get a better look. And that's what got us into trouble. Are you wondering what happened next? Well, in just a moment we'll find out. Here's a little bit about the horses of Mackinac Island. Right here. Why aren't there any cars? Well, people did bring cars to the island in the 1890s. By 1898, the town and the local residents decided enough was enough. They didn't like the noise, and the horses were getting spooked. So they said no way to any motorized vehicles, except a few emergency vehicles, like ambulance, fire truck. And it turns out that their decision has only added to how much people love Mackinac Island. During a peak season, there may be up to 600 horses on the island. That's more than the number of year-round people who live on the island. It gets really, really cold at Mackinac Island in the winter. So not very many people live on the island the whole year. A few horses live on the island all year, with those few people who live on the island all year, and the rest spend the winter on a farm in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. All right, so how about that? Some more of the horses. Horses. You should always ask permission before petting a horse. Horses have the right of way, even over people who are walking. And helmets are required when riding a horse. All right, let's get back to our book and find out what happened that got them into trouble. Chapter 3. It was a man, a very small man, sitting in a great big tree. He had long gray hair that flowed over his shoulders and a long gray beard, and a tall, funny hat that was cone-shaped. The hat had silver and gold stars all over it. He was wearing a long white robe. Boy, did he look out of place on Mackinac Island, not to mention the fact that he was sitting in a tree. He looked like he was a magician or something. The tree he was sitting in was really old-looking. It had a lot of long, black, spiny branches, like thin fingers, but no leaves. I was sure that the tree was dead. Hello! Tim shouted. He said it so loud and unexpectedly that I jumped. I hate it when he does that. The sound must have scared the man, because all of a sudden he disappeared. I caught a flash of his white robe, and it looked like he just ran along the branch and into the tree. Tim wanted to find out where he went. Come on, Munchkin, he said, running past our bikes and into the woods. Quit calling me Munchkin, I scolded. But I followed him anyway. The forest on the other side of the paved footpath was really thick. There was no trail, so I had to use my arms to pull branches and limbs out of the way. It was so thick that it was hard to walk. Trees grew close together, and there were vines and small branches everywhere. I accidentally walked into a spider web, and the thin, gooey string stuck to my face. I hate spiders. I wiped the sticky web away with my hands and continued after Tim. But there was something that was very strange. We walked and walked, but we couldn't find the little old man. It was like he just disappeared completely. Weird. Tim stopped beneath the old tree, looking up and around. "I wonder where he went," he said, gazing up into the branches. I stopped walking too. I looked up, peering through the dense limbs above, but I didn't see any sign of the man. I was really hoping I would be the first to see the tiny man again. Tim is always discovering new things first, but I wanted to be first this time. The forest was very quiet. On Mackinac Island, you obviously don't hear any cars, because there aren't any. Once in a while, you hear a plane overhead, but all we could hear in the forest were birds and crickets. "He couldn't just disappear into thin air," I said. "Maybe he disappeared into fat air," Tim said, making fun of me. "There's no such thing as fat air," I said. But then again, maybe there was. I didn't know for sure. We stared up into the trees for a few more seconds, but we didn't see any sign of the man with the white robe and funny hat. "Let's go back," Tim said finally, taking one last look up into the trees. I followed his gaze, and we squinted up into the sky. No funny old man. He had disappeared. I turned and started to walk back to the footpath. My feet crunched on sticks and branches. "Ah!" someone screamed in terror, and I recognized the voice instantly. That someone was Tim. Chapter 4. I stopped and spun around. Tim was staring at his feet. He was trying to walk, but he couldn't. His feet were trapped in quicksand. It was all the way up and over his ankles. Tim grabbed a branch and tried to pull himself out. He freed one foot, but the other one kept getting sucked farther into the ground. "Help me, Munchkin!" he yelled. I would have been mad at him for calling me Munchkin, but I was too scared. Tim was in trouble, and I needed to help. I walked toward him, watching the ground carefully. I didn't want to step into quicksand, too. I couldn't get real close to him because there was quicksand all around him. Dark, syrup-like mud was everywhere. "Hurry!" Tim said. He was sinking faster, and the brown goo was almost up to his knee. He held his other leg up in the air as far as he could so it wouldn't get stuck again. If he wasn't in so much danger, he would have looked very funny. I searched around and found a long stick. "Grab this!" I hollered, holding it out. Tim grabbed it, and I pulled with all my might. I'm not very big, but I'm really pretty strong. I think I'm even stronger than Tim. I pulled and pulled like I never had before. I felt like I was in a game of tug-of-war, a dangerous game of tug-of-war, and if I didn't win, we were really going to be in trouble. But I wasn't going to lose. I was sure of it. I kept pulling harder and harder on the branch. "Hang on tight," I told Tim. "Whatever you do, don't let go." Finally, Tim's foot came free. He tumbled forward, and I lost my balance, falling back. Tim landed on top of me. "Get off me, you goof," I told him. But I really was glad that he was okay. "That was close, Munch," he said. Munch. I think that's worse than being called Munchkin. He stood up, looking at his leg. His sneaker and the leg of his pants were covered with brown gunk all the way up to his knee. "Mom's gonna freak out," he said. But I know he was really glad that he got out of the quicksand. If he'd been stuck for just a few more seconds, there's no telling what would have happened. But all of this happened last summer. What happened this summer was worse. Far worse. So, is there really quicksand on Mackinac Island? I don't know. I did a little Google search, and I can't find any proof there is. Someone has claimed that there's quicksand in the Au Sable River, according to the definition of quicksand, where it just gets so waterlogged. And it can be very dangerous. You can get out of it, though. But it's not something I would worry about if you want to go to Mackinac Island. So, do we turn the page? Do you want to know what happened this summer that was so much worse? I'll read a little bit longer. Chapter 5. Tim and I were riding our bikes around town, but it started raining, so we hung out downtown for a while. I went into the Island bookstore, and Tim went into the toy store. We both went into a couple of fudge shops, and I bought a big chunk of fudge called Moose Tracks. Yum. Finally, the rain stopped, and we got on our bikes again. We rode by the marina and past the big white fort on the hill. The governor of Michigan even has a summer home on Mackinac Island, and we rode past it, too. There were a lot of people walking on the path, but the farther we got from town, the less people there were. Soon we didn't see anyone anymore. By this time, we'd pretty much forgotten all about the old man, and the tree, and the quicksand. I don't know that I would have forgotten about quicksand and a little old man in a tree. Do you? Okay, well, anyways. So when I was riding past the spot where we had spotted the old man last year, I couldn't believe my eyes. "Tim, look!" I shouted. Tim was in front of me, riding his blue bike. He stopped and turned to see where I was pointing. It was the same strange old man with the funny hat. He was sitting in the same old tree in the same place where he had been last year. Same long, gray hair and beard. Same weird-looking pointy hat with gold and silver stars. He wasn't more than 50 feet away from us. "Hey!" Tim shouted. Sometimes when Tim says hey, what he really means is hello. I was sure the old man was going to run away, just like he did last year. But he didn't. In fact, the old man did just the opposite. He waved at us, urging us to come closer. "Come on," Tim said, hopping off his bike. "No, Tim," I said. "Let's stay here." But actually, I wanted to go to see for myself, too. "Oh, come on, Munchkin," he whined. "Remember what happened last year," I reminded him. "Don't worry, I'll watch out," he replied, referring to the quicksand. I reluctantly followed him into the woods and looked up. To my surprise, the old man was still in the tree, smiling, still waving at us to come forward. I was walking slow, keeping a close watch on the ground. I sure didn't want to step in any quicksand. When we got close to the tree, we stopped. And guess what? The old man had disappeared again. So strange. "Where in the world did he go?" Tim asked, staring up into the branches. I looked up into the tree, too, but I kept glancing down at the ground, expecting to see quicksand. I was relieved when I didn't see any. "This is just like last year," I whispered. "He disappeared last year, too." "Well, I'm going to go find him," Tim stated seriously. "People just don't disappear." He walked toward the trunk of the huge dead tree and looked up. "What are you doing?" I asked him. but I already knew Tim was going to climb the tree. No, Tim, I told him. I don't think it's a good idea. And it wasn't a good idea. It wasn't a good idea at all, as we were about to find out. So here's a really nice picture of the fort on Mackinac Island. Here's the street way down here, and you have to climb, 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 climb to get up to the fort. It really is beautiful. And they'll have little demonstrations, and you can go into some of the barracks that they used during the time. It's a gorgeous place to go, and looking down on the town. Here we go. Here's where they'll have demonstrations and people dressed up in the military garments of the time, and the cannons overlooking the passage between the two parts of Michigan to keep the island safe. Very nice place to visit. And since I taught U.S. history for so many years, we got to have a little bit of history before we go on into the next chapter. I'll do one more chapter on this video. So Fort Mackinac was founded during the American Revolution. So we're talking 1775, 1776, all the way to 1783. It's a long, long time ago. And that was on the mainland of Michigan. And they thought, well, the Americans could attack that too easily because it was British. It was in the British hands, not American. And so the British moved the fort to the island in 1780. And then the Americans took control of it in 1796, because when the war ended, all the land had to be figured out who keeps what, because Canada stayed in British control, but America became America in American control, no longer under the British, and then included Michigan and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and then included Mackinac Island. It was also the site of one of the very first battles of the War of 1812, which was again fought with the British. British, Canadian, and Native American soldiers captured Fort Mackinac. And, just in case you don't know what Michigan looks like, I should show you that too real quickly. Right, so there was a little map in the book, but here's Michigan right here with all the lakes, which spell out homes: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. This is Superior up here. So here is Canada, all right here. This is Canada. And everything was controlled by the British during the American Revolution. So trying to decide what was going to stay in British control, like here, Canada, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump, a little bridge over into Michigan, and right here connected to New York, right here. You can drive from the United States into Canada, back into the United States again, right here through Detroit, really easily. So this stayed Canadian, but this, or British, now Canada, this became American. All right. So one more chapter brings us to 30 minutes. And, 30 minutes is a long time to sit still. If you are still listening, or maybe you've paused this and are picking up on it again later. We'll do the last chapter here. The trunk of the old tree was really, really big. It was black and wrinkled with age. Branches grew out from everywhere, going way up into the air. It looked bony and weird, like some old black skeleton. It was kind of spooky looking. Tim grabbed a low branch and pulled himself up into the tree. I still didn't think it was a good idea, but I didn't say anything more. Tim hardly ever listens to me anyway. If you have a brother, I'm sure you know what it's like sometimes. Be careful, was all I said. Quit telling me what to do, he said sternly. You're not Mom. No, I'm not, but I'm older than you, and you have to listen to me. I do not. I'm bigger than you, Munchkin. By 1 inch, and I'm not a Munchkin. Quit calling me that. Sometimes I just cannot stand Tim. I watched him pull himself up onto a branch, thinking to myself that if he fell, Mom was going to blame me for not keeping him out of the tree. Then not only would Tim be hurt, but it would be my fault. Sometimes it's hard being an older sister. I was watching Tim carefully, watching his every move as he reached for branches and pulled himself up through the tree. He's actually a very good tree climber. He can climb trees like a chimpanzee, but I couldn't help being a wee bit nervous. He looped his arms around a big, fat branch and pulled himself higher still. He was already 20 feet off the ground. Just be careful, Tim, I thought. Just be careful. A motion out of the corner of my eye caught my attention. A branch had moved all by itself. I couldn't believe it. A branch started moving, curling in like a long, skinny finger. Then another branch started to move. Then another. The tree had come alive. Tim! I yelled. Look out! But he was already too far up into the tree to hear me. I watched in horror as the branches slithered about, twisting and turning like black snakes in the sky above. It was the most bizarre thing I had ever seen. I wanted to run, but I think I was too afraid to, and I couldn't leave Tim. I didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, a long branch shot through the air, heading right for Tim. All right, that is where we're going to end this one. If you've listened and followed along all the way to here, I will keep reading and I'll post the next video if you want to keep listening. It's probably hard to find this book. It's pretty old now. So if you want to find out what happens to Tim next, tune into the next video. Take care.